Welcome to Profit Sharing in the Real World. I'm your host, Danny Murphy. This podcast features commentary from Dick Erickson, author of the book, Profit Sharing in the Real World, which is available at Amazon.com. We previously spoke about dignity as one of the four pillars for building a successful business. Today, Dick and I are going to be talking about solidarity, how that pertains to business and profit sharing. Dick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Danny. Uh, this subject matter here is true to my heart so much that to get people on the same page. When you run a business, I've been in some, and you'd see people, a well-run business, it just seems like something's going on. Everyone seems to know what they're doing. We're not talking about having a lot of supervisors around. Everyone knows their job. To do that, though, is you have to really think about what are we trying to do here, and what, to me, the bottom issue it originates from, what is the why? Why are we here to start with? What is it that we're trying to do for the customer? What is it? So that has to be very articulated and explained to the employee, and if they don't buy into it, they don't need to be on the team. And I'm not trying to be bad or good or whatever. We want people who can appreciate what we're trying to accomplish here. And that why has to be well spelled out. So when the people are all together, you'll find it needs very little supervision. They know it. And they're a lot of times capable of doing 4 or 5 other jobs other than the ones that they're really responsible for, because they know why we're here. So a good example of that is a guy's on a machine, and all of a sudden he finds out that customer hadn't been waited on. He's capable of going over and talking to that customer. He's not going to completely leave his job, but he's going to know that it needs to be filled in, because that's part of the why we're here, is to make that customer who hasn't been addressed. Let's get him addressed. We talk to him, get him passed on to the salespeople, whatever. But so they believe in what we're trying to get, and the customer is the focal point of this whole thing. How do I keep the customer happy for the reason he showed up? How do I take care of his needs?
So it's very important to be on the same page. I mean, that's an analogy that's used over and over. The sports analogies, obviously, that the players have to do their jobs so that the team can win. But how does that play out in the business? How do you get people to go on the same page?
Well, like I said, back to the why. So they buy into the why and say, hey, here's the 3 reasons we're here. Not 100. These are the key folks. Number 1 is to please the customer. That has to be done. And how do we do that? And it's a multitude of things like that. It's the cleanliness of the place. It's how they get in and out, meeting appointments, all sorts of things. But these things are the why of what makes a good business. These are things we got to do, and this is why we do them, to please the customer. So getting them on that page, and so as once that has to be, and it has to permeate from leadership too. Leadership has got to, they should be able to fill in a lot of times any parts of that business if there's someone missing or something like that. There is such solidarity that everyone kind of knows what it's going to take to constantly take care of the customer. So once they accept that, then is to stay on point of that. If someone starts, what happened, I found, if when solidarity is really with it, if someone's having a bad day, a fellow employee will usually take care of that. He'll either try to get the guy back up on where he needs to be in his performance, or move in and take care of the performance, the lack of performance. But he knows the program. So we're helping each other out sometimes. We're not all on our best game every day. But to have the team knowing what the big picture is, everyone can fill in.
What about a guy who just wants to show up and punch the clock and go home and have a sick sack, or on the weekend have a day off, or maybe a day and a half off in the tire business? What about that guy?
He wouldn't, if it's a good solid why of why we're here, he wouldn't fit in. He'd finally realize this might be a little more intense than I want. Now we want to reward him, and the real reward in this whole deal is sharing of the profits when it's all said and done. So we want people who understand the why, so we can maximize the opportunity for ourselves. Beside, number one, the customer, but the customer, if he's not staying with us and trading with us, we won't have anything to share. So it's a big part of what happens to profit sharing. It comes from a solid group of folks who are on the same page.
Now, in your system of profit sharing, people were on teams. Each store had their team, and none of them wanted a slacker out there, and they kept their eyes on each other. Tell me about that.
Well, what was interesting, a lot of times we say, well, boss, or they don't even say anything. It's kind of laggard or something like that. They're not into the why enough to the point, and pretty soon someone is lagging. And none said, when the why is strong, they will take the ball and run with the meaning. They'll go talk to us. You had a bad day. We're not getting it done. We promised that customer we'd have him out of here at 2. It isn't going to happen the way we're going right now. We got to pick it up here. And so pretty soon, the boss doesn't have to do that. The person standing next to him takes over and gets that going because he realizes the performance is lagging. So they start looking over at each other, and not always in a mean way, but someone's having a bad day maybe, or something showed up. Fill in quickly.
So if somebody sees another employee getting testy with a customer and knows that that's not going to be productive, it's not going to be helpful, he might walk over and say, "Hello, yeah, let me talk to this guy."
Yeah, and that's exactly. And one of the stories I have is I was really getting into a kind of an emotional deal with a customer one time, and all of a sudden, my assistant manager called over the intercom, says, "Mr. Erickson, you want it on phone?" I went over the phone, excused myself, went to the phone, and it was on dial tone. I looked out, and my assistant manager was with the customer, and there was a smile on the customer's face. He bailed me, and here was the owner and manager about to, get into something that I didn't intend to do, but it's just human things happen sometimes. So that's if we have solidarity, people are constantly watching each other and there to help out if necessary.
And you don't want that other person to make a mistake. You don't want that person to get hurt, that sort of thing.
No, so it was something when we got that together, it was just amazing. It got to be such a well-oiled machine, and people would notice it. People that I was watching out west, and I couldn't, when I first got out there, I couldn't figure out who the manager was. He was just flowing where he needed to be on and we usually pick him busy days to be there. And you can't cover up your mistakes when you're busy. I mean, so I always try to go to places when it's busy so I can really see how it's happening when they're not trying to please me or someone else versus, the outsider watching. So, yeah.
So the manager and the workers, they wore the same shirt, and you couldn't even tell the difference between them.
Nope, exactly. We all, same deal. You had no titles on your shirts. It was a name tag and white tops and blue bottoms.
You've been listening to Profit Sharing in the Real World. I'm your host, Danny Murphy. I've been talking with Dick Erickson today about the second pillar of a successful business, which is solidarity, having everybody on the same page. Dick's book, Profit Sharing in the Real World, is available at Amazon.com. If you have a question for Dick that you'd like to address in a future episode, please send me an email at danny@successstory.biz. That's successstory.biz, spelled out all the way. Thank you for listening.